Greetings in Christ, everybody, and welcome to Meet the Catechism. I am Steve Greene, Director of Holy Family Institute of Catholic Faith and Life. Today we're going to talk about paragraph 365 and 366 in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. For those of you who have been following along, we have under the heading Man, the human person, in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. We've been tracking a series of paragraphs that basically lay out the basics of the Catholic understanding of human nature, the human person, and some of what that means, some of the implications of how we as Catholics understand the human person, created male and female in the image and likeness of God, as a union of a spiritual soul and a physical body. So paragraphs 365 and 366 are going to continue nuancing out that theme. So these two paragraphs are going to talk specifically about the human soul, about our spiritual soul, by which we receive the capacity of intellect, our ability to know and to think and to reason, and our capacity of will, our ability to freely choose and act, and in that sense, at least, self-determine. So let's take a look right away. Jump right into paragraph 365 and 366. Okay, so paragraph 365 begins by saying, the unity of soul and body is so profound that one has to consider the soul to be the form of the body, i.e., in other words, it is because of its spiritual soul that the body, made of matter, becomes a living human body. Spirit and matter in man are not two natures united, but rather their union forms a single nature. Okay, so that last piece we've talked about a fair amount already as we've moved through paragraphs 355, 357, and 364, that the human person, our human nature, is a single nature comprised of a union of both the spiritual and a material element, a spiritual soul, a material body. So you can go back through those paragraphs and through those videos if you want to dive into that last piece of it a little more. In paragraph 355, though, what I want to really kind of lean into in this particular video is the idea that the soul is the form of the body. Now, without going too far down the rabbit hole on this one, when the Catechism is using the word form there, it's actually borrowing a philosophical term from Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, whereby the form is that which causes a thing to be what it is. This is the cause that speaks to what this thing is. And so when we talk about a human person, and we say, well, what is it that makes a human person to be a human person? The Catechism is saying in a very real sense, because of this intimate, fundamental, God-ordained union of the physical body of the human person with a spiritual soul, because of the profound fundamentality and primacy of that union, we can actually say, in answer to the question, what is it that makes a human person a human person? That it is our spiritual soul. Because our spiritual soul, and again, going back to Aristotle's definition of soul as that principle which gives life and unity to a body. It's the spiritual soul that gives life and unity to the human body. But paragraph 365 nuances that a little bit by adding the observation that it is because of its spiritual soul that the body made of matter becomes a living human body. In other words, what it's saying is the soul, the spiritual principle in man, is what orders and orients the material element of man to become a human body. And so the human body is the proper dwelling place of the human soul, but it is the spiritual soul that designates, that orients, that orders the matter that it's created in union with to make the body a human body. And so so the soul is the form of the body. Now, just a quick note there, because I want to highlight some challenging questions that follow on the church's teaching. So the church saying that the soul is the form of the body, first of all, is a challenge to the atheist, materialist worldview, which says there is no such thing as a soul. There is no such thing as immaterial reality. Everything which exists is simply matter and motion. That's actually quoting Thomas Hobbes, British empiricist philosopher, who's one of the early fathers of modern philosophy. Hobbes said everything is just matter in motion, meaning if we let science do its job long enough, the empirical science will eventually demonstrate that things that we thought were immaterial, things that we thought were spiritual, like mind, soul, God, memory, imagination, emotion, are really just the biomechanical exhaust of physical and material processes in the human body. It's a pretty radical claim to make, actually. He's cutting across pretty much the entire history of human thought. Not that it was always well articulated, but it was always assumed, and assumed because of both experience and observation over the centuries of antiquity and ancient human civilization, that there was something more than just material in man, something more than just physical, because he could do things that matter can't do, like think, reason, imagine, remember, feel emotions, choose and act freely, etc. Okay, the Catechism in paragraph 365 is saying that's not so. There is a spiritual, immaterial element in man, and it is, of the two elements of man, the spiritual and the physical, it is the primary, the fundamental, and it is the ordering principle. It is not the physical body of man that orients and orders and configures the human soul. Instead, it is the spiritual principle, the spiritual soul in man, which orders, orients, and configures the material element into a human body, through which then the spiritual soul is able to express itself and is able to gather sensory data and is able to assimilate that into its thinking, its knowing, its judging and evaluating, its choosing, its willing, its acting, etc. Okay, so this is right off the bat, this is a challenge to the atheistic materialist view of man, which we've said before is profoundly reductionistic, reduces man from this unity of spiritual and material, created in the image and likeness of God, male and female, divine origin, divine destiny, to simply a random outcome of physics and evolution, pushing matter through the void of space and time. Okay, so 365 is already kind of throwing down that gauntlet and saying that is not a true understanding of the human person, nor is that a complete understanding of the human person. Move on to paragraph 366 then, because this is going to take even more specific aim at our understanding of the spiritual soul, the spiritual element in man. Paragraph 366 says, the Church teaches that every spiritual soul is created immediately by God. It is not produced by the parents, and also that it is immortal. It does not perish when it separates from the body at death, and it will be reunited with the body at the final resurrection. Okay. Just start with that first sentence. The Church teaches that every spiritual soul is created immediately by God. It is not produced by the parents, and also that it is immortal. We could, if we were cruising through the Catechism, we could run right past paragraphs 365 and 366, and because we have absorbed over our lives as Catholics enough of this teaching, or at least indirectly enough of what this teaching implies, that we're sort of familiar with the language, it's likely that we could cruise right by these two paragraphs without realizing what a profound statement has been made, what a profound claim has been made about the nature of the human person, and also what a profound challenge has been offered to the secularized, post-Christian, materialist view of man. And this is not accidental. Brothers and sisters, when they composed the Catechism of the Catholic Church, first edition out in 1992, second edition out in 1997, they were, of course, completely aware of the current cultural narrative about what a human person is. They wrote this section with that misunderstanding of the human person, that misunderstanding of human nature firmly in mind, and they wrote this as a challenge, not an angry, contentious, looking to pick a fight challenge, but as a confident, courageous, bold, and full-throated re-proposal of the great truth about the human person with which the Catholic Church has been entrusted. So When we look at that opening statement, that the soul is created immediately by God, what the church is saying there, because that language sounds a little strange, the soul is created immediately by God. What is the church claiming in paragraph 366? It's claiming that at the moment of conception, the mother and father, the human parents, contribute the biological material for a new human person. In other words, they contribute the material necessary for a new human body. Sperm from dad, egg from mom. The chromosomes, the 23 chromosomes in the pairs that of course will combine, create their own unique genetic fingerprint, their own unique DNA in the new little person at conception. But what the church is saying is, of course, for mom and dad to contribute the material needed for a new human body is not enough. We are not just a body. We are a body, but we're not just a body, not merely a body. We are a union of a physical body and a spiritual soul. And so while mom and dad may contribute, or produce is the word that paragraph 366 uses, the material necessary for a new human body, God alone can provide the new spiritual soul. And he creates it immediately. So two things to say there. First of all, the human soul, which makes a new human person, is created by God in union with the biological material from the parents, mom and dad. And so he unites a new spiritual soul and an immortal spiritual soul. It says, right, that in paragraph 366 says it's immortal. It will not die. Even after it separates from the body at death, the soul itself will not die because it can't die. It's not physical. It's not material. It can't disintegrate. It has no parts. It is a spirit. So he creates this new spiritual soul in union with the biological material, and you have that union of spiritual and material that makes man. A new human person requires the spiritual soul. Otherwise, it's just a partially formed human body. And as 365 said, it cannot develop into a human body without the form of that spiritual soul to organize, orient, and configure the matter in such a way that it becomes a human body. So the spirit is the fundamental principle here. And the fact that it's created immediately means this is not being pulled from a bin of souls, right? There's not like a soul box that God has of, billions of pre-existing souls, and he just, like someone pulling bingo balls or raffle tickets, kind of reaches around in the bin of souls and pulls one out and, oh, there we go. And then tosses it into the mixer with the sperm and the egg, and voila, new human person. No, God creates that new immortal spiritual soul immediately at the moment of conception. So to pan out on this for a second and give you just a simple way to grab onto what the Catechism is saying here, and I'm just going to walk out a couple of the implications and we'll leave it there for now. So what this means then is that the formula for a new human person is 3 elements, each one of them essential and irreplaceable. First, sperm from the man. Second, egg from the woman. And third, not just third, but most important, most fundamental, most necessary, is new immortal spiritual soul created immediately at the moment of conception by God. Okay, so if this is true then there's some serious implications that follow. Number one, if it's true that to get a new human person, you cannot just have the biological material from the parents, you need the new immortal spiritual soul, which God creates immediately in union with that sperm and that egg at that moment of their union. Sperm penetrates egg, not any sperm, every sperm. That sperm from that man, that egg from that woman. And at the moment of their union, God again breathes his own spirit. Just like at the creation of Adam in Genesis 2, he breathes his own spirit, immediately creates a new immortal spiritual soul in union with that sperm and that egg, and creates a new, unique, unrepeatable, individual human person. That happens at the moment of conception. If all you have is the sperm and egg, you do not have a new human person. So let's reverse engineer that then. That means that there has never been, if this is true, and spoiler alert, friends, it's true. If this is true, then it means that every person who exists, every person who exists today, every person who has existed in the past, every person who will exist in the future exists because at the moment of their conception, Almighty God Himself willed their existence by creating their immortal spiritual soul. That means there are no accidental persons. As we know well, the circumstances around the conception of a given human person can vary widely. According to God's plan, the way He intended it, that should always happen in an act of lovemaking between a husband and wife and a sacramental marriage, a lifelong commitment that they will honor till death do them part. And tragically, because of sin and human frailty, it does not always happen that way. Nonetheless, no matter what the circumstances around the conception, even, and this is to tip into a deep mystery of the eternal perfect will of God working through profoundly imperfect and even sinful and foolish and misguided human circumstances, even in cases where the conception, the fertilization of egg by sperm happens in a petri dish or at a sperm bank or in a test tube, God Himself creates immediately a new immortal spiritual soul. He intends that person. There are no accidental persons. There are no superfluous persons. There are no, and listen to this, there are no unwanted persons or unintended persons, even if the human parents did not want this new person. Even if the human parents did not intend this new person, God did. He created a soul at the moment of that conception and brought a person into being. Obviously, you see how this flows directly into the Church's teaching on the unique and unrepeatable value, dignity, worth, and following on the value, dignity, and worth rights of every human person, regardless of their circumstances. This undergirds the Church's pro-life position for the unborn. It undergirds the Church's position in defense of the terminally ill and the mentally and developmentally disabled, and the elderly and the forgotten. This undergirds the Church's entire understanding of the dignity of every human person, the equality of every human person. Lots to think about and ponder there in paragraph 365 and 366. Hope you enjoy kicking those around a little bit. Thanks as always for watching our Meet the Catechism videos. We certainly enjoy making them. Please subscribe and like below. Of course, that helps us out. And remember, the Church has what the world needs. So learn your faith, live your faith, and share your faith.